So, at a company that I was a partner with, I was always number two. It's like the vice president, in charge of winemaking, had a bunch of winemakers under me. And again, this is a time of catharsis at 45. And I think a lot of men and women go through this going, is this what I want to do for the next 20 years? I decided I need to do something different within the realm of what I do, which is winemaking. And so I reached out from a colleague and to India, of all places. A couple of Indians contacted me, and and this is in the old days of faxes. Remember faxes? When you had a fax right by your bedstand and it was going in the middle of the night. Of course, this is halfway around the world. It goes, it's so funny. But at the same time, hearing these faxes were so exciting. So it meant that I was moving. And I did this project in 1995 in India these Indians said, Kerry, we're growing table grapes. We'd like to grow wine grapes. India has no wine culture. And so I said, and I was ready to travel. My neighbor across the canyon traveled the world, and I wanted to travel the world. I mean, that sort of was impetus of me becoming this international dude that I am. And so I went to India in 1995 to an area called Nasik. It's in Maharashtra, and that's the same state where Mumbai is. I call it Bombay. It's the British name. And it's north. It's up on a plateau. It's tropical grape. It's subtropical, but up at 2,000 feet, it's more Mediterranean. Although the grapes don't go dormant, so we grow the grapes during the Indian winter. Indian winter looks a lot like a Napa Sonoma summer. And they grew table grapes there. And I said, absolutely, we can grow grapes there. Of course, we had no idea what to bring. And we brought, I sort of based my opinion on what did post-war U.S. look like when Americans weren't drinking. So I thought, let's make picnic wines. So I brought Chenin Blanc and Muscat Canelli and varieties to make rosé. And, and what turned out, that endeavor never really came to fruition. But then, and this is like a milestone, my business development MBA, who worked for me at this winemaking company that I worked for, I went to Wharton, very smart dude, and said, Kerry, I have a friend who went to Stanford, and this Stanford guy who got his graduate degree at Stanford in computer sciences, working for Oracle, would like to start a winery with you in India. And here I'm going, well, that sounds interesting. I've been to India once. I didn't ever think I was going to go back. So his name's Rajiv Samant. He was like 28 now. Now he's like 52 or whatever, so we're talking about 25 years ago. Rajiv and I had luncheon at this wonderful little restaurant in Glen Ellen, California. And he said, Kerry, I've been smitten by the bug, and my parents just happened to have property in Nasik where you grew your grapes. And Nasik was sort of the grape capital of table grapes at the time. I said, well, dude, let's do it. He said, why don't you hire me? And I like to work for a vintage because I know nothing about wine. I've lived in Palo Alto, undergraduate, graduate at Stanford. And why don't you hire me? So I said, I'll hire you as an intern. Now, I need to give you a little inside dope about Rajiv. Rajiv's a Brahmin, and you can tell anyone who's out there who's from India understands the name Samant means there's he's sort of an upper clansman. So I defined a special job for Rajiv, and although he pumped over tanks, I don't know if he ever cleaned a tank, but he created incredible spreadsheets for me. So Rajiv and I became fabulous friends. He was my intern, although he didn't live with us, but he lived in Cloverdale and then ended up moving up closer to the winery in Hopland. But we would have these discussions about starting a serious wine project, the first serious wine project in India. There were a couple of funky wineries, nothing from the New World, no noble grapes meaning all the grapes we think of today. And so we spent the autumn of 1997 strategizing what it would be like to start a new world, not old world, but a new world winery in India. And of course, the most interesting question would be, with what varieties? What varieties would grow in India? So we're talking about subtropical. Even though we're at 2,000 feet, the vines never went dormant. So you had to prune twice. And a little side note now, we're the largest, subtropical endeavor in the world. We're now 1 million cases. And more importantly, what wines would Indians want to drink? They didn't know anything about wine. Women didn't drink. Men drank whiskey, which is a pretty darn good thing to drink. But they would all drink before the meal, or men would. Women would drink juice or tea. And so we spent, along with Daisy, we'd go out to restaurants, have Asian food, have American food, and we had to decide what varieties that we would choose. We decided, number one, because Rajiv was now aware of the project that I had done 3 years prior, that we would, and I contacted my partner because he was not building a winery, that we'd buy his grapes. So we had Chenin and Sauvignon Blanc. And so in 1999, the grapes were old enough, and we made our first wines. I spent 2 months in India, and it was just a crazy. The wine we started the winery. The winery is now this huge 75-room. 5-star hotel, but we created a winery. The winery had dirt floors, and I've done this before in California, and I said it'll work. I brought in an intern who's a lab guy that worked for me from California. He was my stay-on winery, and that was for March, April. I came back in December, and of course, but this is before internet, and so I would just fax messages back and forth what to do. And so I came back in December, and the wines, I told my cohort over there how to stabilize the wine. Of course, that's a whole nother story, going to the Taj Hotel with these first wines. Wasn't quite stable. And I remember going around, and this time now we had concrete on the floor, and tasting Chenin Blanc, and we had 120 cases, I think, of Chenin and Sauvignon Blanc. And I have to tell you, one of the happiest moments in my life was the fact I tasted them, and they were beautiful. I mean, they weren't perfect, but they were absolutely accurate. And I knew that we had a project then.